Before you even think about looking at what's out there, could be a new drilling rig or could be, let's say, micro drilling or whatever the case. You got to ask yourself, am I ready to do this? Do I have the necessary resources in place to tackle this new segment? After you've done your internal gut check and you know you're ready to roll, are you just going to jump on and pick anyone from this beautiful world just because they have the product that you need? No, hell no. It's not just online shopping. This is a strategic partnership that can literally make you or break you, right? When you want to establish what a supplier is standing for, the number one test, and honestly you can't change my mind on this, is how. I'm Mike the Brother and this is TerraQUIP Talk. After years of providing drilling equipment solutions, I know that a project success hinges on reliable, high quality rigs that meet your needs. So if you're ready to make smarter equipment decisions and build stronger foundations, let's get started. All right, drilling pros and podcast listeners, get ready to grab a coffee and settle in, because in this episode is going to be really interesting, man. I'm telling you, it's probably going to be my favorite episode yet, and here's why. I'm going to be pulling back the curtain and sharing with you my own journey and how I became the IMT dealer and all the nitty-gritty insights on how I picked all of our top tier suppliers. That's 4 of them. That's IMT, that's Marini, and of course our German friends from Klein and G&H, which is now known as just Hatlapa. So this isn't just theory, guys. I'm not just telling stories here. This is battle-tested experience from the trenches of the drilling world, so to speak. So let's kick things off with how we build our incredible lineup here at TerraQUIP. I gotta tell you, it was not a sprint, and it was more like a marathon, and a really well-planned marathon, actually. So first things first, our adventure started with IMT back at the end of 2018. And honestly, at the time, for solid 2 years, right up until 2020, we just wanted to be laser sharp focused on IMT brand. We wanted to get the IMT name established in Australia and New Zealand, because honestly, people didn't know about it. IMT was not present in Australia until 2018. That meant I wanted everybody in the industry, from the big players to the blokes on the ground, to know of us, to know our machines, to test them, to try them, to have enough local studies, to back them up, to show basically the building and the foundation industry that they're worth having a look at, to prove what they could do down under for us in Australia, and not only in Australia, but in New Zealand too. So I'll just tell you a really interesting story here. IMT started in Australia quite late in 2018. They've been looking for a while for a dealer, but they couldn't really find one until 2018 when we started working together. Number one, because they couldn't find a dealer, yes, but number two, also because they were so busy with other markets. In the US, not a lot of people know, but IMT actually sold over 1,200 rigs, so 1,200. The Caterpillar dealer in the US is Kelly Tractor. It's also the dealer for IMT machines. And just to give you a rough idea, like just a brief idea of the sheer size of Kelly Tractor, only in their renting fleet, they have about 115 piling rigs. They're easily one of the largest drilling, let's say, company in the world, like rentals, that have 115 machines. So in Australia, for example, if you have 10 rigs, you'd be considered one of the large contractors. Now imagine having 115 rigs. That's just mind-blowing. So once we felt the IMT was kind of standing strong, we started looking at making these IMT machines a little bit smarter. We wanted to give them a brain, basically. And what do I mean by this? Obviously, I'm joking by saying a brain, but it literally wanted just a computer system that would gather all the drilling parameters. And that's when we came in contact, and we were put in contact with our German friends from G&H. Our goal was basically simple. We wanted a system that would not interfere with the controls and the functions of the drilling rig. We just wanted a system that allowed us to measure, record, share, and truly analyze all the drilling parameters, getting all that crucial information about your drilling, let's say, process, right at your fingertips. So G&H was actually introduced, as I said, to us at Bauma 2019 by another contact in the industry. And it just goes to show that connections are so important, to have the right connections in the network. And the fact that they recommend us, it was a very successful, let's say, marriage. And after that, piling equipment side of things was kind of established with G&H on the computers, with IMT as the main supplier for drilling rigs. We wanted something to complement our drilling range. And of course, that was the micro drilling. We had the large diameter pile, which is, let's say, 300-400 millimeter diameter and above, all covered with IMT. We wanted something from the micro drilling world for your micropiles, let's say anchoring, soil nails, underpinning, basically everything to do with micro drilling, right? We wanted to be able to cover that as well. And surprise, surprise, that supplier was no other than Italian again, and that was Marini Drills. They stepped up to the plate, right? Fast forward a few years later, and after we've been running hard with IMT, with G&H and Marini, in 2023, we brought in our first concrete pump from Germany again, from Klein. This was just about running out our job site equipment, especially on the CFA side of things, CFA being continuous flight auger technology, right? Where concrete pumping is king, is so important. And funny enough, Klein and G&H, they're neighbors, right? Funny how these things work, but they're basically from the same area. And G&H was also the ones that helped Klein with some of the, let's say, the computers on the pumps as well, right? So they're very well, integrated together. Now, here's a confession. I've known Klein pretty much since 2019, but we didn't officially represent them until 2023. We didn't want to start them, right? Why the wait? Well, simply put, because we were not ready as a business, as a company, just being honest here, right? To take on another name under our flag. We didn't have the human resources, we didn't have the capital, the technical know-how, and all the rest of it, right? So I was pretty much adamant, from the beginning. I didn't want TerraQUIP to become just like a supermarket, just slap another product on the shelf, just for the sake of having another product. That's just not how I roll, right? In fact, in my book, for us to bring another name into our market, we had to satisfy a pretty stringent set of criteria. And by the way, these aren't just rules for us, right? Or for me. This is exactly the kind of checklist maybe you guys should be looking as well and applying when you're out there choosing which brand of piling rigs you should work with, that you put your heart and money into. So what's involved in this checklist? First things first, I think we should ask the question, as we said, are we ready to take on? It might sound obvious, but it's the absolute foundational question. Before you even think about looking at what's out there, you got to ask yourself, am I ready to do this? Do I have the necessary resources in place to tackle this new segment? Whatever that may be, it could be a new drilling rig, or could be, let's say, micro drilling, whatever the case. It didn't matter for us if the drilling manufacturer was out there and was an amazing manufacturer that literally was begging us, to take them on. That didn't mean we should just jump on it, It's like buying a Ferrari, but you don't have the garage, the fuel, or even the driver's license, right? So you need to look at yourself in the mirror and ask, do I have necessary funds? And I'm not talking just about the purchasing price here, but all the, let's say, support structure around it, the training, the support, and all those stuff. And then you have the people, or do you need to employ some people? Do you have the time? Because launching a new brand, hell, it's a massive undertaking. You need to dedicate so much time to it, and it's not just going to sit there. It's going to require your energy, your attention. And then critically, you have to ask, you have to think about the logistics, all the advertising, the promotion, the training, all the spare parts, getting all the stock and the inventory system that makes your product viable right in that market. Jumping in too soon is, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. And I've seen it with some of my competitors. They jump from one supplier to the other, different brands. They just out there. Anyway, whatever works for them, I'm glad for them. That's just not how we roll. We like to be specialized, and we want to keep loyal, to a certain product if we start working with them. But before we do, we look at factor number 2 as well. And that is, after you've done your internal gut check and you're ready to roll, are you just going to jump on and pick anyone from this beautiful world just because they have the product that you need? No, hell no. It's not just online shopping. This is a strategic partnership that can literally make you or break you. So with Marini, we couldn't actually visit the factory because it was right smack bang in the middle of COVID and nobody could travel. They couldn't come to us. We couldn't go to them. So this was the only instance where we actually struck a dealership agreement, first and last probably, just through Zoom meetings. But even then, it wasn't just a Zoom meeting. It was like just endless phone call conversation, emails, questions, and research. And then if you do have the opportunity, I said it many times, to visit the factory, go there, look them in the eye, try to understand what their core values are, and to see if their values align with yours. Do they prioritize quality, integrity, customer service, long-term relationship? All of these factors can only be seen if you sit down with them, if you actually get to see, what they stand for. And I said it many times, this is something you should be doing as well if you're looking at buying, especially your first drilling and piling rig or micro drilling rig. Try to take the time and visit a factory. Make a trip out of it as well. Okay, so speaking of questions, when you want to establish, what a supplier is standing for, the number one test, and honestly, you can't change my mind on this, is how fast and efficiently do they answer my questions. Listen, when you're asking someone for quotes, offers, details on the products, you're basically asking them to take your money. You're literally saying, I'm ready for you to take my money. I just need you to answer a few little questions. So if they take their sweet time to answer and get back to you, in my humble opinion, this is a huge red flag. It's a great indication that that's just not the supplier you want to work with. Because if they take this long to reply to you when you're practically throwing money at them, just imagine how long it's going to take them when, let's say, you're down or you need support or something, breaks down. It's just a powerful, simple litmus test. Just to give you an idea, between March and November 2020, we spoke to approximately 6 other manufacturers in the space of the micro drilling from all around the world, right? We spoke with some Finnish manufacturers, we spoke with some German manufacturers, we spoke with some Italian manufacturers, and even with one Korean, I think, yeah. And none of them seemed to really, truly match with our values, right? None of them looked like a good option for us to represent and invest our time and capital in. And you know what? We realized that was the case on both sides, Sometimes the chemistry just isn't there. And that's perfectly okay, right? With some of those manufacturers, we're still good friends. We're still saying hi. We still talk from time to time, Just because we didn't have the right chemistry for a partnership, that didn't mean the time was wasted, because in the process, it allowed us, to learn a lot. And honestly, we actually enjoy the selection process, the qualification process, because it sharpens our focus, and improves our knowledge about the industry. Then the other thing that you need to ask and you need to think about is, are they truly ready to invest in our market? And that's something, this is a massive one for us, right? And what does it mean, ready to invest in our market? Well, are they willing to give us stock? Are they willing to carry spare parts for us, right? Are they committed to providing comprehensive training for our people, right? And are they willing to travel and help us in the, let's say, promotion and our advertising efforts, right? And with this very point, I'm going to share with you my story with how I became the exclusive dealer in Australia and New Zealand for IMT. And basically the very start of TerraQUIP drilling itself, right? Because let's face it, TerraQUIP is IMT, right? Like we're so joined together, So how did we do it? How did we become the dealer? Well, I was essentially put in contact with IMT through another client of mine. And that client, bless his heart, told me, Mike, you really need to get in touch with these guys. I've been to Italy, I've been to IMT, and they're desperately looking for a dealer. They've been looking for a dealer for a few years now, and they couldn't really find anyone reliable, And that exact client told exactly the same thing to IMT. They said, just call Mike, don't waste time. Just call Mike and, talk about a fantastic referral, right? So IMT called me straight away. It was no other than Walter Fioravanti, who's a very respected and genuine professional person, basically the vice president of IMT. Walter, if you're listening, hi. I know he's listening to our podcast quite a lot. He basically just laid it out there for us, right? They said, look, we're ready to start in Australia. We're very serious. We're very committed. And I think you should come to Italy and get to meet us. We want to meet you as well, meet the owner, and even jump on some of our machines, and test them, see what they're about. And of course I did, guys. It was only a few days later. I was pretty much on a flight to Italy, buzzing with excitement. I met with the representatives from IMT and the owner, which was an absolute gentleman. He pretty much said, after, no exaggeration, about 15 minutes meeting, he said, anything you need, spare parts, stock, training, the whole lot, will help you, right? But you know what? It didn't help. It didn't stop there. He also put me on a 12 months retainer package, to help me with the initial stages of the business, with that critical cash flow. Now, this is what I mean by ready to invest. It wasn't just talk, it was tangible commitment. And you know what? Besides the, let's say, the material side of things that he helped me with, and the training, the support, he also told me some words that set me up on such a trajectory, from a mental perspective. You see, I was honest with him and I told him, I said, look, I've just started my business. I've never been a business person in my life. I've always been an employee. I'm not really sure. Are you sure you want to invest so much with me? Are you sure you're ready to do that? I was fully honest, and a little bit insecure as well. And he said to me something that I'll never ever forget. He said, hey, listen, I've been traveling with my dad since I was 5 years old. I'm now 60 something. And I've seen people, I can tell when people are business people from literally like within 5 minutes of talking to them. If I tell you you're a business person, you're a business person. And with this, get that rubbish out of your head and start as soon as possible. And I believed him, that set me up on that gave me such a good motivation, and set me up on such a good trajectory. And I'll always be grateful to this man, and in general to the guys from IMT, they helped me tremendously. So what do you think happened, with all that motivation and all that enthusiasm and all that trust and commitment they put into me, right? Well, I'm glad to say that I tried my absolute best, to take the IMT flag to the highest level possible. And I'm very glad to say that back in 2018, there were pretty much 0 IMT machines in Australia, in New Zealand. And now we're counting pretty much over 40 units, or just about. I haven't checked the final numbers with all the orders that we have, but I think it's about 40 units or a little bit over 40. Now, that's a partnership built on trust, mutual commitment, right? Just quickly, need reliable drilling equipment for your next project? At TerraQUIP Drilling Equipment, we offer tailored solutions with top-tier support to meet your project needs. Contact us using the links in the show notes to find the perfect equipment for your drilling project. Now, back to the episode. Then, of course, you got to ask yourself when choosing a supplier, in my opinion, what's their history, right? Because history does matter. And what do I mean by this, right? Well, you have to have a look at when did they start, how many years have they been in business, how many machines they built, what other dealers do they have around the world, who represents them, right? And perhaps the most important, what do people on the ground say about them, right? What's their reputation? So let's just look at some strict examples here. In IMT's case, they have over 2,200 machines built worldwide to this day. They started manufacturing their first machine under the IMT flag, IMT name, in 1974. However, Giuseppe Accoroni, which is the father of Andrea, the current owner, actually designed and built the first Italian drilling and piling rig back in 1957. Now that's what I mean when I say history, right? That's such deep roots into the game, guys. In Marini's case, they're not far either. They also started 50 years ago with the drifters, with the quarry equipment. Then they moved into micro drilling, and they pretty much celebrated their anniversary the same time, which was last year in 2024. Now, I totally understand that not all companies have this kind of epic history. And of course, it doesn't mean that you should not be working with someone because they don't have 50 years in the industry. It's not an absolute must. But what I'm saying is the fact that longevity in the game does mean a lot, and it gives, a lot of experience, that definitely helps. It means basically that they had the time to trial and error, to learn what works, what doesn't, And with that, I'll just give you a bit of statistic, right? Think about it. I don't know if you ever heard this, but more than 92% of the businesses ever founded don't live up to C5 years. And less than 3%, so more than 97% of businesses don't live up to C10 years since they're founded. So those statistics, it's so hard to stay in business, for 5-10 years, let alone for 50 years. That means, what I'm trying to say with this is that means they've done something well. um, sometimes I go on job sites, and I talk to people and I hear them saying like, oh, such and such, they build such shit machines. That's such a shit machine. And they're talking about reputable brands. They say like, oh, such and such. And I'm like, how dare you? These people have built machines for 50 years, mate. They've been in the game for such a long time. Yes, they are machine. I will never say about a machine that a machine is shit or anything like that, especially when it comes to a manufacturer that has so much history, right? Yes, there are. I will say that their models, they are more suitable for one type of, let's say, drilling or specific projects or size of projects or whatnot. Some products are better supported than others, right? But in no way, shape, or form you can say about something, about a manufacturer that has such a great history and experience that they're shit machines. Now, when it comes to our German mates, Klein, they have over a quarter of a century, 25 years experience in concrete pumping alone, so very highly specialized as well. And so we spoke about history. We talk about their willingness to invest and support us. We check their history. What else do we do, guys? Well, what I did was also to call around for people and for references, to see what the experience of the end user was with that manufacturer or with that particular dealer, right? And this is what I encourage you guys to do as well. I always provide my clients, when they're looking at working with me, I give them a set of like 5 or 10 phone numbers, and I say, look, from these 5 or 10 numbers, call anyone here and ask them their opinion about me and working with TerraQUIP and what was our level of support, right? Just ask, and don't trust me, right? Just trust, check for yourself. So what we did with IMT, with Marini as well, we called anywhere in the world we could find, online, whatever information. As long as they spoke English, we tried to call and ask for their opinion. And I remember before I even went to Italy to meet the guys at IMT, I started researching what else, where else in the world they are represented. Of course, I found they're in the United States, they're represented by Kelly Tractor, as I said, which is also the dealer for Caterpillar. So massive company, right? They have like 30 big names under their belt, So, and with this, I'll tell you the funny story. At Bauma 2019, I was just started. The TerraQUIP was only like a year and a half old. I just started working with IMT, and we met there some of the representatives from Kelly Tractors, and they're kind of making fun of me. They say like, so IMT is represented represented by Cat in in United States, by Kelly Tractor, and in Australia they have Mike. But you know what? That doesn't matter. That just goes to show that it doesn't matter how big or small your organization is. As long as you're motivated, passionate, and truly believe in your products that you represent, sooner or later you will be successful. I guarantee you this, right? Now, we've spoken about the factory. We've spoken about their existing customers. What else do we do? Well, in my case, I actually went to my potential clients and I said, look, I'm looking at starting to represent these guys. What do you think about them? Do you think they're gonna work? Do you think they're a good machine? They could be a good machine. Have a look at the specs, have a look at them. And if not, why? What can we do? And then if yes, that's fantastic. Maybe they could even become our clients in the near future. And that feedback, from our Australian clients has been absolutely invaluable, because it gave us the ability to tailor make and refine and do those small adjustments, on our product, which is another thing that I wanted in a dealer. I wanted a dealer that could offer and had the ability to offer tailor-made solutions for their product. And I don't mean by this like reinventing and every single machine they put out there to be a prototype. Hell no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I want their machines, their refined models, the machines that went through all the trial and errors, but with small, minor changes, right? And these small, minor changes, could be something as small as, let's say a switch, that allows you to move from main winch to auxiliary winch control, or could be something, let's say, between to offer multi-lock kilibars or J-lock kilibars, right? Or a simple switch that you can activate to activate a auto rotary function, right? So just things like this, small little tweaks that make a huge difference, for the operator comfort, for our area, and could actually make the difference between a loved machine and a hated machine, right? These are just some of the rigorous steps we went through to make sure that once we signed that dealership agreement, we were ready to give 100% of our efforts to promote, support, and to basically do justice to their name. It's about building a reputation for excellence and not just making a quick buck. Even now, total disclosure here, I've been in close contact for probably the last year with a casing oscillator manufacturer, right? But we haven't actually taken it to the market. I haven't officially said anything or announced it until I'm saying now, because we want to make sure that their products actually fit and their products are tested, that we have a good example, of how they work, what their support is like, what their sales is like, what their quality is like. So before we jump into all of that, and I was totally honest, with the OEM, I told him from the beginning, I said, look, we have all of this set of stringent criteria that we want to go through in order to make sure that we can work together, right? And in some cases that doesn't work, like they lose their patience and like, okay, well, we'll find someone else, but it's better to take your time or to be turned down by someone than to start something and then half a year later or 1 year later you realize that it was the wrong decision. And it happened to us once. We almost started working officially with another Italian manufacturer that used to manufacture small drilling rigs. And thank God we took our time and we went through all of this criteria, because you know what? They actually went bankrupt on us. So it would have been a huge blow to us and to our reputation and to our name. So in conclusion, folks, selecting the right product and by extension the right supplier is absolutely not an easy job and requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of boots on the ground sort of effort. But what's the alternative? To make a rush decision? Hell no. It can be incredibly expensive and it could literally make you or break you, as I said. So if you want help with your decision making process when you're looking to buy a drilling rig or let's say a particular equipment for the job site in the drilling space, of course, because that's what we do, please don't hesitate to contact us. I'll absolutely do everything I can, everything in my power to make sure that you're making the right decision, that I'm guiding you in the right space. And no, we're not just about the sale. I will gladly say no to the sale if our product, don't really suit your project, right? But we will say yes to the relationship, because we're here for the long run. We're here for building trust and building, long life partnerships, not just for a quick sale. And with that, we're wrapping up another episode. Please stay tuned. We're starting to have more fantastic guests here at TerraQUIP Talk Podcast. It's only going to get more interesting. Look, until next time, thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button if you can, please. And then just remember, if it's not turning, you're not earning. Thanks for tuning into TerraQUIP Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support us is by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. You can also find out more from me on all social media platforms. The links are below. Until then, remember, if it's not turning, you're not earning.